Good afternoon. It's Wednesday, the 9th of November 2016, just after 1 o'clock. Welcome to UK Column News. I'm your host, Brian Gerrish. With me in the studio, Mike Robinson. Well, before we talk about anything to do with the American elections, a few comments on the weather. Apparently it's sunny in Brighton and Cardiff, North Wales heavy rain, Manchester overcast, Norfolk is reported as suffering hysterical weather. We're waiting for an update on that. And Plymouth is grey and cold, I think is the best description. So on to the US, and people are already asking what has happened to Cruella de Vil, also known as Hillary Clinton. And of course, it was Patrick Henningsen from 21st Century Wire yesterday that put up the image of, Mickey Mouse versus Cruella. So for those of us who were up during the night, let's take a little look through the then unfolding events. And it was well worthwhile being up in the early hours because things were mentioned which clearly have not been mentioned since most people have been up and had their cups of tea and gone off to work. So here was CNN, and they were simply reporting as the results were coming in, but you can see bottom left, Trump was already in a considerable lead of 247 versus 215 for Hillary Clinton. Now, just remember that because whilst American stations are obviously reporting live, apparently the BBC was doing the same. But what I consistently found is that they were very slow to update results. It was almost like they couldn't press the buttons, Mike, in order to get the horrible reality up that Trump was outperforming Hillary Clinton. So I'm going to say the BBC reports this is £3.65 billion worth of BBC were consistently late, and I would suggest misleading. Here's another, here's another shot. CNN again, I've just highlighted those figures for what it's worth. But eventually we got to the point where people are saying, well, it's obvious that Mr. Trump has won. What's happening at the Clinton HQ? Nobody seemed to know where Hillary Clinton was. And then at a particular point here, this is 2 a.m. Eastern time, we've got breaking news, campaign chair to speak shortly at Clinton HQ. Did we get that speech? Eventually it did pop up. So let's have a look at the sort of thing that was coming up. So this is John Podesta, and he said a number of things, but to a very packed and very despondent Hillary Clinton audience, he said this: some states are too close to call. We're not going to have anything more to say tonight. Everyone should head home and get some sleep. So this is quite remarkable, and it was certainly remarkable for the supporters of Hillary Clinton, because from the camera shots that you could see, the people just looked shell-shocked. They didn't know what to do. They didn't know what had happened to the campaign. They didn't know where Hillary was. They were simply being told, we're not going to speak to you tonight. This is my interpretation, but we don't care how much work you've done for Hillary Clinton. We're not speaking to you, and you might as well go home and go to bed. Pretty astonishing arrogance to the Clinton supporters. And what I'm going to say is that these sorts of nuances on this campaign simply not reported by any of the British mainstream media. What happened, of course, we eventually got to the stage where Vice President Mike Pence got up on stage, and he gave a very measured little speech, which was obviously to announce results, but also to ultimately to introduce Trump himself. But he used this little expression, which I was very interested in. He said, amongst other things, "We won by the grace of God." So I just thought to myself that as we have seen the drive for the satanic agenda under President Obama, was something about to change? Indeed, had it changed? I'll leave viewers to consider that. And then, of course, we had the man himself, and he came on stage. Now, I don't believe that any of this speech has actually been reported yet in British mainstream media. I can't be certain with the press, but if we look at certainly what the BBC and TV channels have been reporting, I haven't seen what this man said. So this is a paraphrase from what we picked up earlier this morning, and here we go. So he said, first of all, thank you to all supporters. This is about us. This is about we. So a very inclusive speech, and quite rightly, he's thanking his supporters. In contrast, I would say, Mike, to Hillary. He said that we've got to rebuild US infrastructure. He said we must look after the excluded. He might have said the poor, but I'll say excluded. And he was very, very positive about American veterans. He said he'd met a lot of veterans and he listened to what they had to say, and America was going to look after its veterans. He said we'll get along with other nations. America will not settle for less than the best. We will reclaim our country's destiny. We must dream of beautiful and successful things. And he said US interests will be first, but we will deal fairly with everyone and nations. And whatever you say about this man, there was something very calming about those words that came out. And no doubt, Mike, you'll pick up on the fact that here's an American president. What's he majoring on straight away? But infrastructure of his own country to rebuild the damage that's occurred under the Obama and previous administrations.
Well, some of the commentary I've seen from more sensible analysts said, well, despite all the rhetoric before the election, this speech maybe perhaps gives a better indication of what this man's all about. And of course, all bets are off at this point. We've got to wait and see what actually happens. Yeah. But certainly things seem to be changing in the last couple of weeks of the campaign. He started talking about reinstating the Glass-Steagall Act, for example. He started talking about rebuilding the nation. He started talking about economy in a more sensible way than anybody else that I've heard recently. So perhaps there is some cause for hope.
Well, I think this has got to be a better cause for hope than if we'd have had Hillary, better known as Cruella, in post. So now let's follow on through. We've seen it's got to the point there where not all the votes were in at the stage that Trump addressed his audience, but it was very clear that he had won. And let's have a look at what the BBC did. Well, they finally and grudgingly got Trump on the front of their US election exclusive page. There was their reported win of 278, and that was Trump passing the required 270 line. What did the BBC then do? It unleashed a pretty vicious attack on the new president. And of course, let's remember that this is being done on the back of our money. So this is a couple of screenshots from that BBC election website. I'll blow this one up and see if I can read you a bit of it. But it's from David Remnick, the editor of The New Yorker. He said, the election of Donald Trump to the presidency is nothing less than a tragedy for the American Republic, a tragedy for the Constitution, and a triumph for the forces at home and abroad of nativism, authoritarianism, misogyny, and racism. Trump's shocking victory, his ascension to the presidency, is a sickening event in the history of the United States and liberal democracy. And then he says this contrasts effectively with Obama, the first African-American president. Listen to this, Mike, and you may have to take precautions. A man of integrity, dignity, generous spirit, and witnessed the inauguration of a con who did little to spurn endorsement by forces of xenophobia and white supremacy. So this is all paid for by the BBC, and they didn't leave it at that. They went on. So here we've got another little posting that a Ku Klux Klan leader had been tweeting congratulations to Trump. No doubt they had to trawl the internet to find that one. But this was not just an isolated incident from the BBC, because on it goes. They had to get a comment from Brussels. So the European Parliament President Schulz has called Donald Trump's victory a protest vote along Brexit lines. So the BBC felt it necessary to quote an EU that we've supposedly just left in order to get another stab in against Trump. And we've got a bit more here with this other one. Famed English historian Simon Shamana, if I pronounce that rightly, he did not hold back as he voiced concerns over Trump's potential for fascism. So, Mike, I've got to say, this is really astounding, even by BBC standards, that they can't even report properly on the election. Trump then wins with sufficient margin to shock many people. And how do they respond? They simply gutter press and attack.
So we have the situation where Russia Today is beating off Ofcom every single week. They're paying lawyers to get rid of Ofcom who allege the bias by RT. And we've got this from the BBC, this from the BBC over the Brexit vote, and the same type of thing over Trump. And where is Ofcom? Nowhere to be seen.
No, nowhere to be seen. And I'm afraid I'm going to rub this in because let's have a look at BBC's Twitter page. And remember, this page is the product of licence payers' public money. So I went and had a look at this to see the sort of thing they were talking about early this morning. And what have we got? Well, let's expand that a little bit here. BBC breaking news. Markets react to Donald Trump win. Asia shares plummet. European stocks plunge. Mexican peso fall. So this was all another attack. This was about, if I remember correctly, about 8:30 this morning. And yet if we look at reports on world markets now, they're saying, well, there was a bit of a wobble earlier on, but things are now stabilising.
So by about 8:45 on the Today programme, they were having to say, well, maybe the markets are just waiting to see what's going to happen. Well, the coverage on the Today programme was a mixture of apocalyptic fear, because Trump represents the end of the world. They had one commentator on who was actually pretty balanced about it. But to be honest, they wanted to get him off as quickly as possible.
Yeah.
So
because we don't want to hear too much about factual information about Donald Trump. So let's come on to the mystery of Cruella de Vil. And this was a report from Business Insider, but this is one of the ones because during the early hours of this morning, American TV stations were picking up on the fact that nobody knew where Hillary Clinton was. Nobody knew if she was actually going to concede even, although she did eventually telephone Trump, and this was reported quite widely. But then, of course, people were saying, well, when is she actually going to face the cameras and admit defeat? When is she going to talk to her own supporters? But there was absolute silence. Nobody knew. And then, as we've previously shown, her campaign manager was forced to tell the Hillary Clinton camp, go home and have a good sleep. We had a little look at Hillary Clinton's speeches website about an hour ago. We were interested to see they've still got posted here that you can expect Hillary to be addressing the American people on election day. But unfortunately, no sign of Hillary. And a few of the people in our chat box have wondered seriously if Hillary Clinton has had some form of mental breakdown as a result of learning that she has not won the presidency. Could that be possible? Personally, I think it could. So utter despondency amongst the Hillary Clinton supporters, and the Mail in particular, photograph after photograph of people hugging each other, lying in the fetal position, crying, consoling each other. Quite a pathetic spectacle around this missing woman. And you found this, Mike, which was wonderful.
David Scott sent us this, and it is quite wonderful. So here we've got a picture of a tombstone with the American flag behind it saying, "Here lay Sky News and BBC News, wounded on the 23rd of June 2016, killed by their own toxic bias on the 8th of November 2016. So that sums it up, really.
Yeah, wonderful. Well, I'm afraid it gets worse, though, because if we take a look at The Guardian, who are they blaming for Trump? Well, none other than us. So a very interesting article, and encourage people to go and read. Yes, the election polls were wrong. Here's why. Mona Chalabi, and let's have a look at what she had to say. The polls were wrong because we're obsessed with predicting opinions rather than listening to them. We didn't see it coming. So the world woke up believing the Republican candidate, Donald Trump, had a 15% chance of winning based on polling predictions, but he's now in power. Then she gave some very interesting information that she'd worked as a data analyst with Nate Silver's website, so political forecasting. She said she walked away totally disillusioned because it seemed that they were putting subjective bias on their maths. That's not my spelling mistake. It's an American speciality on mathematics. There was also a certain arrogance that comes from being part of an elite that gets the numbers, and an entrenched hierarchy meant that predictions weren't properly scrutinised. So she gives an insider's view into the pitiful workings of the pollsters. But then in this article she says, but actually you, the reader, are complicit in this huge mistake because you didn't go and check what a horrible man Trump really was.
There we go.
There we go. So, excuse me, what is going to happen? Well, of course, according to the same Guardian, the World Globalization Program is going to face an attack. Now, that's an interesting comment, Mike, because I think there's some truth in this. So in this article, they're, of course, defending globalization. It's helped most people in the world, but maybe not white working class people in America and Europe.
Yes. Look, I'm going to have to stop this because people are mentioning audio problems, so I'm just going to try to sort that out. So just hold.
Okay, apologies for that. I hope you've got a better reception now on sound. We've done our best. I think we'll need to continue through the news. But just to recap there, The Guardian, of course, saying that, well, Trump's in and our nice globalization program is probably going to come under attack. Well, what had Mr. Putin got to say? It was quite interesting. He's basically saying that Russia is ready to restore relations with the US. He said, we heard Trump's campaign rhetoric while still a candidate for the US presidency, which was focused on restoring the relations between Russia and the United States. And he mentioned this when he was talking at a ceremony of foreign ambassadors. So this was the key bit. We understand and are aware that it will be a difficult path in the light of the degradation in which, unfortunately, the relationship between Russia and the US are at the moment. Certainly Russia today was saying that President Putin very ready for a restoration of proper relationships with the states.
And Benjamin Netanyahu then squirmed that President-elect Trump is a true friend of Israel, and I look forward to working with him to advance security, stability and peace in our region. I don't believe a word of that.
Well, it's an interesting question, Mike, isn't it? Is he actually telling the truth or producing the words to calm supporters of Israel?
Well, look, it's interesting, isn't it? Because if we look at Brexit, no matter what we might say about Brexit and whether what's actually going to happen at the end of the day is real or not, no matter what we say about Trump and whether he's going to be a serious president or not, the fact of the matter is there's been a massive shift in public opinion over both these votes, and that the people's view has been made clear. So, bearing in mind the media coverage of this today and what's happened over Brexit as well, I think we can expect to see much more of this type of thing. In fact, I think we're going to see the media going absolutely mad with this type of rhetoric in the press. Go to hell is the Reuters headline. A divided America struggles to heal after an ugly election. And we've got imagery of petrol bombs or fires being set and riots and so on. I think we are going to see much more of this as they try to ramp up the tension between people, between those who voted for Hillary and those who voted for Trump, between those who voted for Brexit and those who voted to remain. This is going to be ramped up more and more, and we've got to be absolutely on our guard for it and not falling for it.
Indeed, and that's what made Trump's initial message so interesting, because it was a message about America uniting. He said, we've had a very hard campaign, but now we've got to get people united, and we've got to get behind a united America itself. There were also reports of windows being broken by Hillary Clinton supporters after they initially realised that clearly she'd lost. So yeah, the seeds are there. Well, what has Mr. Nigel Farage been up to? We have to report this because we are now on the trail of Nigel Farage and what he is doing exactly. So the Mail here, this is bigger than Brexit. Giggling Nigel Farage can't contain his delight at the prospect of President Trump as he flies to America today in a bid to be Donald's ambassador to the EU. Mike, I don't have an answer for this. Why would Nigel Farage possibly want to be ambassador for the EU? Isn't the whole point of his campaign to get Britain away from the EU?
Well, he thinks he's achieved that, so perhaps but he still wants to remain within the EU, on the EU gravy train, perhaps. I don't know. I don't have an answer to that either. I find it a very interesting statement, if it's true from the Mail, that he wants to be Trump's ambassador to the EU.
Right. Meanwhile, we know that inside the leadership of UKIP, the infighting still goes on. So Farage, who's busy overseas while his party leadership are having a mega squabble, no sign of a leader, and Nigel Farage still temporary leader. So all of those millions of UKIP supporters, voters, corralled, not doing any of the things that they should be doing, while Nigel Farage is away now playing on the American circuit. Well, it's good news for the BBC, though, and a good day for burying bad news. We just remind people, of course, that the BBC yesterday was crowing about the errors in the Met's VIP paedophile probe, Operation Midland. So the BBC absolutely on the bandwagon to help the cover-up of child abuse by the British state. Outrageous stuff. Well, the antidote to all of this is going to be the British Constitution Group conference in Winchester on the 19th. And if you have not got tickets, we'd like you to join us. So get onto the British Constitution Group website and you can still buy tickets at the online price of £10. And sorry, I just come back one here. There's the website. If you haven't visited it, go and have a look. Recently updated. Well, I gave you a sneak preview there, but we are just astonished and delighted at the support we've had from our viewers and listeners to our plea for money to help the Doherty family, Brian and Janice Doherty. We're now a little over £2,500 raised in 48 hours. And I have to say to you that this sort of level of money is required to support this family. At the moment, they are in a safe location. They are literally recovering from pretty vicious harassment and threats over the last couple of months. And there's some more exciting information to come out about them in due course. Thank you for your support. Please continue to support. And if you haven't donated, perhaps you consider that. Now, some people have said, how can you donate? The answer is simply go to the UK Column website, donate via the PayPal button here. But what will come up eventually is the PayPal menu, where just as you're confirming your payment, you can insert special instructions. And we just would like you to put in Doherty or Doherty family so that we can see those donations are for the family themselves. But what a brilliant response, Mike. Incredible.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, Tonight, Vanessa Beeley speaking in Frome. It starts at 7:30. It's in the Wheat Sheaf, the Wheat Sheaves pub, aka Frome Venue in Bath Street in Frome. If you can get along to that, 7:30 tonight. Hope to see you there. Tomorrow's news, it'll be me and Vanessa. We'll be speaking quite a bit about Syria, and actually, it won't be the BBC that'll be receiving a lot of focus, but Channel 4. We'll enjoy that tomorrow. So just one Syrian story today. Syrian aircraft carrier, according to Sputnik, the Syrian carrier group, is preparing strikes on Aleppo. Now, what was amusing in the coverage of Trump this morning on the BBC was they managed to wheedle in the whole Syrian conflict. And one of the commentators slagging off Trump also made the point that Trump is going to be best mates with Putin, and Putin is bombing Aleppo every day. In fact, Putin hasn't dropped a single bomb on Aleppo for 21 days now. So this article is saying that a source within Russia's Ministry of Defense told Gazeta.ru that the Navy's carrier group is ready to launch a strike targeting Daesh terrorists in the province of Aleppo in the next 24 hours. And so I just asked Vanessa, are they giving this warning in a final effort to get people out of East Aleppo? Now, what Vanessa told me, Brian, was that there have been a number of people sort of resigning from al-Nusra and trying to leave East Aleppo. People that have been within the terrorist groups, perhaps co-opted into the terrorist groups. They've been trying to get out. And in fact, the terrorist groups are shooting them in the back as they go.
And I've got to say, Mike, that underlines the point that I made the other day, that the British government draws up a kill list of some 200 people, saying these are all bad people. That's the government's word. And the British Special Forces are now out to kill or capture them. But many of these people, of course, blackmailed, terrified into fighting with the terrorist groups anyway. So we've got more evidence that people trying to break away now from the terrorist movements.
Absolutely. They're trying to get out. They're being shot if they try to get out. But nonetheless, Russia, I suspect, is trying to give them an opportunity, at least as much opportunity as they can, to get out. Okay, so let's move on to other news, UK news. The Policing and Crime Bill is working its way through Parliament. It's at the committee stage in the House of Lords today. Just read out what this is covering. It's a bill to make provision for collaboration between the emergency services, Brian. So this is all about merging these. This is exactly what we've been talking about for quite some time. To make provision for super complaints about policing, to make provision for the investigation of concerns about policing raised by whistleblowers when they're not in prison, to make provision about the system for bail after arrest but before charge. So I suspect that is about the protection of names after people have been arrested and before they've been charged. To make provision to enable greater use of modern technology at police stations. To make other amendments to the Police and Criminal Evidence Act 1984. Does that mean that the burden of evidence will be reduced? We have to look at this in detail. To amend the powers of the police under the Mental Health Act 1983. This is another one that I'm flagging up that needs to be looked at in some detail. To amend the Police Act 1996 to make further provision about police collaboration. And to make provision about the powers of the National Crime Agency, and to make provision to combat sexual exploitation of children. So a number of items in that. But the House of Lords Library has provided a briefing document and an overview of provisions. And they're saying Part 1 would place a statutory duty on police, fire and ambulance services to collaborate to improve efficiency and effectiveness, and would enable police and crime commissioners to take on responsibility for fire and rescue services. So we're talking about the merging of the services. This is a further degradation of the separation of powers. And of course, it's all part of the one public estate type of initiative.
And you undermine the professional performance because you try and make people masters of several different subjects. They're never going to do it. So if you're a professional policeman now, you've got to become a firefighter and a first aider as well. Maybe some aspects of the first aid, but this is degrading professionalism.
Right, and Part 3 would enable chief officers to confer a wider range of policing powers of police, civilian staff, and volunteers.
Yeah.
That's
now you blur the boundaries
absolutely
on what a policeman is, and this is taking us towards Nazi Germany, effectively, where you have allocated members of the public to spy and report on their family and fellow citizens.
And a much greater input from private companies, of course, as well.
Yeah.
So it goes on. I mean, this needs to be looked at in detail, because along with the Investigatory Powers Act, this is one of the most dangerous acts on the books at the moment, as far as I can see. It's still a bill, it's not an act yet.
And all of it coming in over the smoke, under the smoke screen of whatever the big topic is, American elections at the moment, but other headlines around Parliament. But this is the really dangerous legislation which is now being pushed in, taking us towards a dictatorship.
And the other thing that's taking us towards a dictatorship is leadership training and training of all kinds. Because, of course, they want to start young. So let me introduce you to this organisation, Ambition, leading the way. Now, Ambition began in 1925 as the National Association of Boys Clubs. But the main change began in 1992. So 1992 to 2012, they changed their name to be NABC Clubs for Young People, no longer just for boys. In 1999, this then changed to the National Association of Clubs for Young People. In 2012, their new name became Ambition, reflecting the common purpose, as we're going to see in a second. So this is typical of what they're into. All the colours, all the unusual fonts and so on, vision, mission, values. We are spirited, we collaborate, we are creative, we lead. So this is great stuff. Now, they had a conference running in the last couple of days. And who was speaking at it? Well, it was Rob Wilson, MP from the Department of Culture, Media and Sport. And he said, I'm delighted to be there. He said, and to see so many faces, familiar faces in the room. I've been lucky enough to meet a good number of you before, and so on. The best thing about my job, he said, in government is the chance it gives me to meet young people and witness firsthand their talent and creativity. It also allows me to see the fantastic work many of you do. And he went on to describe how that he is intending to, or he recently announced £80 million of new investment in youth projects. This is joint funding between government and Big Lottery Fund. And he also announced a further £40 million, which is going to go towards the second part of their vision, which is to support young people's personal growth through positive engagement in communities. And this is what he's describing as the #IWill Fund. And that's part of an ongoing effort to support of the Step Up to Serve I Will campaign, which will encourage volunteering in young people. Now, we've been highlighting the dangers of this type of civil society volunteering for quite a long time. But let's have a look at IWill. Here's their website, #IWill. I like the logo. They say they're promoting practical action in the service of others. They say IWill is a UK-wide campaign that aims to make social action a part of life for as many 10 to 20-year-olds as possible by the year 2020. Through collaboration and partnership, it is spreading the word about the benefits of youth social action, working to embed it in the journey of young people and create fresh opportunities for participation. The campaign is being coordinated by the charity Step Up to Serve, governed by an independent board and has cross-party support. So it's governed by an independent board. We'll look at that in a second. Well, let's see what Theresa May had to say this. She said that she wants Britain to be a great meritocracy of the world, and a fundamental part of this is ensuring all young people get best possible start in life. So that's what she said about the IWill Fund. Now let's look at some of their board and look at how independent they are. This is Sir Nick Parker, the chairman. General retired Sir Nick Parker. He joined the army in 1973. He served in the infantry, had command of a battalion of the Royal Green Jackets and a brigade in Germany, which included some time in Bosnia. He commanded the army in Scotland with additional responsibility as governor for Edinburgh Castle. He was head of the Joint Staff College. He had an senior operational tour post, including commanding the UK Joint Task Force, advising the President of Sierra Leone, Deputy Commanding General Multinational Corps Iraq. He was commander of UK forces in Afghanistan, poppy crops, and Deputy Commander for the International Security Assistance Task Force in Afghanistan. So it goes on. Since leaving the army, he has been working with McKinsey and the Blavatnik School of Government in Oxford on an initiative to improve global human development.
Wow, career in the army, and now you've hopped across to global human development.
Indeed.
Maybe he's not human, he's just interested in the humans.
I don't know. He's a director of the Military Mutual, advises Maloney Military Services, and so on. He's got other things. His second in command, I suppose, is William Nye. William Nye was the chairman before Sir Nick Parker, but he stays on the board. He was born in 1966, educated in Christ's Hospital, Horsham, BA in Economics from Cambridge, MA in Economics from Yale in the United States, and he's a lifelong civil servant. He began in the Treasury, then he ended up as head of arts policy at the Department of Culture, Media, Sport. Then he ended up as head of defence, diplomacy and intelligence at the Treasury. Then he was director of performance and finance at the Home Office, director of counter-terrorism and intelligence at the Home Office, director of law, security and international at the Home Office, director of the National Security Secretariat at the Cabinet Office. Then he became Principal Private Secretary to Their Royal Highnesses the Prince of Wales and the Duchess of Cornwall. Then he became Secretary General at the Church of England. So he is one of their independent board members.
This is a very special man. People who have this meteoric rise through the system, they can do anything. They can do 1, 2, 5, 10 jobs at the same time. These are very special people, and usually they're up to no good.
Well, in this case, they are training our youth. And
indeed,
so
yeah.
This is no good. Now, here's one of the founders of this organisation, Amanda Jordan, OBE, and she's wearing her common purpose purple jumper, cardigan there, whatever it is.
Colour of kings.
Absolutely. She is a founder of Corporate Citizenship, extensive experience of all kinds of things, and she has had involvement advising PricewaterhouseCoopers, Cisco, Shire Pharmaceuticals, Caterpillar, so she's a real player. Particular interest in charitable foundations, so this is absolutely right into the NGO complex, and she's advised many corporate foundations on their governance procedures. She was a former managing trustee of the NatWest Foundation. She advised the Association of Charitable Foundations, member of the National Lottery Charities Board for 6 years, chair of both the UK and international grants committees, and so it goes on. But what is her background? Well, as she said, she was involved with PricewaterhouseCoopers. Here she is in the Southwark case study. And what's significant about that? Well, because remember, she is one of the founders of this little youth training organisation, but she is also one of the founders of Common Purpose, because Common Purpose, PricewaterhouseCoopers, while she was there, was a founding corporate partner of Common Purpose in Southwark. So that's her. Now let's have a look at another young lady. This is one of their trainees, Meg Neefsey. Independent coursework that she's done, training of trainers in gender equality, confronting gender-based violence, global lessons and case studies from India, preventing the Zika virus, understanding and controlling the mosquitoes involved in that. She's a YEUK young professional. She's into human rights, the rights of refugees. She's Erasmus and What's Next? So she was involved in residential courses in the Czech Republic. And of course, she is a Common Purpose 3360 graduate. And this is what she has to say, because she's also a #IWill ambassador. She's part of a team of young ambassadors who are leading social action and making a difference to our communities, selected due to a strong commitment in social action. Through sharing our journeys with others, we hope to encourage more young people to get involved in helping their local communities and make the I Will pledge through a variety of activities. Common Purpose is right at the heart of this organisation. It's just received a £40 million grant from central government, but it's independent, so we don't need to worry. Yeah. And what it's doing is reframing the minds of young people with a view to them growing up with a view of democracy, which is not the same view of democracy that you and I have, because what they're talking about is participatory democracy, where only the selected people get to participate.
Yeah, several people have been chatting in our chat box and are saying, well, why don't they leave the children alone? They are not going to leave the children alone, because we can see very clearly in the named person scheme north of the border in Scotland, the state is aiming to own our children, as the Scottish member of Scottish Parliament says. Don't worry, parents will also have a role in bringing up their children. The state, this vicious state which is installing itself in UK at the moment, will own our children. It will own them while they can work for the state, but the moment they become elderly or infirm, they become useless eaters, and the next stage is that they will be euthanized. So basically, be under no illusions, the state is going to own the minds of our children. And this is another expose of this very, very dangerous common purpose program, which is going through as part of its big society, Mike, isn't it? When David Cameron said he was pushing through big society, it only really had brief mention in the mainstream press, as if it was all a little bit of nonsense. It was, in fact, deadly serious. This was the Saul Alinsky agenda for the third sector, non-government organisations and charities being an inherent part of central government. And that's where we're at. People have got to start talking about this.
Yes.
Okay.
Now, just before we go,
yeah.
I'd just like to apologise for the technical problems earlier. Now, look, the two issues with this. We do have a technical problem in the gallery there that we actually don't have the resource to sort out permanently at the moment. But the other thing is that a couple of people have offered just through the YouTube channel and so on to perhaps come and down to the studio and offer us some advice on the audio side of things. We'd be very happy to take that offer up if you would like to get in touch. I don't know how to get in touch with them at the moment, but if that offer is genuine, then please do get in touch.
Okay. And I'll just end on the note of donations to the UK column, not only for the UK column itself, but also the Dohertys. Simply go to the PayPal button and fill in all the details. When you come to the final approval page in PayPal, there will be the box where you can put the other instructions saying that it's for the Doherty, or you're making, or why you're even making a donation. So simply follow the instructions on PayPal. This shouldn't be difficult. And with respect to thank yous, we've been giving thank yous out via the program. Some people are contacting us directly with donations. We can, of course, thank those people directly. But I have to say, we simply do not have time to be responding to each person individually when they make a donation. This is not being unkind. It's just the reality. It's the reality of the situation. Yeah. So we are thanking everybody now. In due course, I'm sure that you're going to get personal thanks from the Dohertys themselves, but we're trying to deal with an extremely difficult situation as best we can. So thank you for your support. And we do, of course, appreciate the support that you're giving. That's it for today. Mike has explained that there'll be a special news edition, which will be Mike with Vanessa tomorrow. And we will be back for normal service on Friday.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining us. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.